Good morning, friends. Happy November 25th and the day before Thanksgiving in the United States. Today we're going to talk about 4 equidistant strings on a mountain dulcimer. And let's move the thing out of the way and let's go to the overhead camera. All the fancy stuff. So this is a McSpadden Ginger. It's a shorter scale dulcimer, and it's one I like to keep with all the strings separated. You can look, there are slots in the bass bridge for me to move my strings. They could be laid out in the more typical bass, middle, and doubled melody, or they can be laid out in this 4 equidistant string pattern. The nut has the same slot configuration. There is a 0 fret here, so that maybe you haven't had as close a look at that. That's a 0 fret. That's where the string actually starts vibrating, and the nut ends up being the guide for the strings to go through. All right, so why would someone do this, and what benefits come from this, and who does it? Right now I'm tuned 1, 5, 8, 8, or D, which is the D that's below in the middle of the bass clef, which means it matches the low D on my hammer dulcimer, the A that's in the next octave within that same first octave, and then the D on the higher 2, which is an octave higher, which is why I always, let's see here, I always write this D, A, D, D, with a smaller case for the Ds that are an octave higher. Let's see if I can get that. Find that here. Here we go. Now, one of the reasons to be able to do this is the way that Jean Ritchie talked about doing it on her dulcimer. And that is when she tuned the bottom one to the D, the low D, and the middle and the melody this way, then the string that was closest to her could be the string she tuned for anything else she wanted to tune. She only had to change one string. So that let her play in the Mixolydian scale. Now I'm tuned to D, A, D, A. Let me type that in here. D, A, D, A. The da-da tuning. And it lets me play. Now it lets me have a drone that's low, middle, and high around the melody that I'm playing. So I can play all my DAA things on the melody string this way. I can also go to DADG. So what it's doing is giving me all the things I expect to see. Plus an extra thing. So I have the middle string being the A, the next one being the D, now I have that Dorian scale that starts at the 4th fret. Let's see, what do I want for... So it lets me play that way. I can also go up to C. And Talon, you're saying you have an extra wide fretboard, so yes. So the D is A next to the D is like on a regular space, and then the Ds that are closest to you, or whatever you tune this melody string to, can be. So now it's the C, D, A, D, C. And I'm using the lowercase to show this, the D that's outside of the octave, and everything that's in uppercase to be in this first octave. So that lets me do that. And that's the way Jean Ritchie would talk about how she tuned her dulcimer. And it's very flexible. The other thing it lets you do, it lets me, the noodling position that I would normally do in a DAD instrument, I'm retuned back to DADD. Lets me have a high ringing D. So it lets me just get another kind of a drone that's in the higher octave. That's actually what Mike Clemmer does with his 5-string dulcimer, where he has a 5th string, and so he has a D, an A, D, and then doubled melody strings, so that he has that D A D D, and he just says ignore that other D, and you get that high, and it gives a good kind of an old timey feel. Now, the other way this could be, the other reason that we could do this way is my Galax instrument is laid out like this. So when I'm playing, and it's tuned to D, 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 all in the higher octave, that when I play with my noter, I'm covering 2 strings and I have 2 as drones. And that's certainly something I could do with this as well. Heidi Mueller up in Joseph, Oregon, just sang this beautiful Cassiopeia tune in her North Georgia Foothills Dulcimer Festival concert on Saturday. And she was using this tuning D-A-D-A, the one I used earlier, and using a D-A-A chord shape, and it has that extra high little thing that just feels nice. So she's one of the people that uses this tuning, and I'm not going to know everybody who does this, but the people I know that do. Heidi Mueller does. Oops, nope. We're getting rid of. Facebook is trying to add names in here. Sue Carpenter in Texas. Thomasina. Levy in Connecticut. Rob Brereton, also in Connecticut. Janita Baker in California. Let's see who else. I'm thinking of somebody else and now I'm forgetting right now. Hey, Rusty. Those are the people that just come to the top of my memory of people who are using this 4 equidistant strings tuning. Now, I will use it on my dulcibro also, but I'll do it in this kind of a pattern. So now I have an open chord. With this gauge of string, it's not the best recommendation that I can make because the F sharp is very floppy. The A is also pretty floppy. And that lets me have 4-note chords. How can you mend a broken heart? Let's see. How can Lucy have her wings? Please help me mend my broken heart and let me live again. It lets me have the 1, 3, 5, which is the bottom, the stable part of the major chord, with that major 7 on the top. So let me see if you have, I went kind of fast through all these. Let me see if you have any questions about that or experience that you want to talk about. If I was to use it on this instrument with this gauge of strings, I would get it out of D. I would move up to probably G or something like that. But I like having this option of the extra. Now, what happens though is all my chords become major chords. So like when I wanted to get that E minor as the next chord. I didn't have a place. It's just beautiful. I'm going to go back to A now. So now Dada again. Now there is a tune. It's for simple 2-note chord or 2-finger chords like letting the high one ring, right? Stir up your power, oh Lord, come into our weary, broken life. We are ready. Yeah, I'm skipping over one here, or I skip over the melodies. And that's fine. If your eye is getting caught or your fingers are fumbling around trying to reach, having them right next to each other is nice, and you're just playing on the middle. This is also what I think of when I'm playing guitar, and I'm not trying to cover all 6 strings. I'm just covering the strings I'm going to be needing. So I'm covering the ones in different situations. Now in this case, I am playing the melody string and skipping a string to get there. Exactly. It's like the high string on the banjo. And it gives that kind of, that's where the old-timey kind of thing can come in. It can feel like that. All those things that are below do. So, Talon, this is where how we talk to each other in numbers. The bottom string, some people will call the bottom string the bottom of the tablature. This is why I'd never talk about its position. I talk about its by note, by scale value. So when you're talking about the bottom D string, I would be saying the bass string is the bottom. And that's going to be a capital D because it's in the low octave. And I'm always going to call the bass string first when I'm talking about tunings. There are people who talk about the melody string and go to the bass. And that's why we just have to clarify what we're talking about so we both understand. If I'm doing what I think you're saying, I've got 2 on the bottom, which is what I expect to have for a D chord. Because the reverse doesn't work. Is that what you're doing? Well, I think this is what we were going to do for the banjo sound. Stephen Seifert, in his Band Jammer DVD, okay, I'm not going to talk, this is not bottom in my language. I see what you're saying. So you're saying the bottom string is the 2nd fret. And if I have them tuned D-A-D, D-A-D-D, when I do that, when I put those next to each other, I'm not going to get the sound that I was looking for either way because they're the same pitch. So I'm understanding your language. That's not the way I'm going to be talking about it. But Steven Seifert on his Van Jammer DVD talks about using this tuning, D-A-D-D, and he does his melody stuff, and he's playing tipped up a little bit, and he's letting his thumb do what the claw hammer thing does. So I think I see what you're saying is turning this string that's next to the bass string, having it go up to the high D. So you've got a doubled octave down here, then the regular A, and then that same octave. That's an interesting. I had not tried that. It would mean for me changing the gauges of the string, so that this one right here is not the one I expect to have set up as an A. I'm going to have a D string, a high D string here. Haven't seen that one before. Anyway, Steven talks about this, where because this is a high D, he'll play he's doing the typical claw hammer. He's adapting the claw hammer style of banjo playing to playing a 4-note dulcimer. And he's going to play his melodies on the lower 3 strings, and the high string, the melody string, is going to be his drone string. Right. And that confusion, Talon, is why I don't talk about bottom and top. I talk about bass, middle, melody. So are you, because what you're describing in your tuning, you've got a low D here, then you've got a high D on the next string, then you've got a regular A on the next string, and then a high D on the melody string with that particular one. Is that correct? All right. Interesting. I haven't tried that one, but I would need to change the string gauges in order to try it. But this is one of those things that's just very interesting. Oh, Aubrey Abwater. I forgot to mention Aubrey. Who teaches on Dulcimer Crossing. He's also someone who plays in 4-equidistant string tuning a lot. In fact, she is the one that has lessons about that. Let's see. Let's go by teacher. And let me share my screen. And she talks about Lorraine Lee Hammond is where she learned it from. And then she talks about some different versions of the song. And Wendy Songs does too. Well, how about that? This is really cool. This is a picture of Lorraine. It's not a picture of Aubrey, but this is her lessons playing with 4 equidistant strings on Dulcimer Crossing. So now I got to write Lorraine and Wendy in here. In the early part of the 70s, Lorraine Lee Hammond was one of the people who had, Carrie Crompton was another person who had the books that were published that were available for us to look at, those of us who were following in their footsteps. Wendy Sange, Lorraine is up in the Northeast, and Wendy Sange is in Oklahoma, in Tulsa. So we got people doing this way of playing all over. Feels like there's somebody else that I should be talking about, and I'm forgetting right now. The reason that Stephen was talking about this about the band jammer is because Mike Clemmer, who makes the band jammer, makes it as a 5 equidistant string, or not as a 5 string, but it's a 4 equidistant string pattern where the bass string is the lowest, and it's a D. Then you have the A. Then you have the high D, and then your 2 melody strings can be tuned to whatever you want them to be tuned to. I'm going to have to call that person back. Yes, we're praying for Wendy. So if you have questions about this, you can always write to me, steve@dulcimercrossing.com. Or if you have other suggestions for things we could explore, I've been getting some, and thank you very much from everyone who's sending ideas. I tend to do a lot more finger picking this way than I do strumming, but there have been some really nice, there's a song by Thomasina Levy. That's not it, but I just went to Dona Nobis, but I'm forgetting her song right now that's so beautiful. Imagine, dream, listen, explore so many. When she was the poet laureate, or the balladeer of Connecticut, she wrote that as after being in a school. We got a chance to play it together. So if you have an opportunity to try that, I encourage you to do it. 4 equidistant strings can be very interesting. And there's fewer resources available, but there are good ones. The ones that are there are good. You know, Neil Hellman might do some 4 equidistant string things too. But I'm not for sure about that. Well, friends, if you're celebrating Thanksgiving in the States, I saw a great thing today from someone who was quoting from the first book of Isolations, saying, as for me and my family, as for me and my household, we will stay where we are at. First book of Isolations, chapter 13:3 or something like that. It was great. Anyway, be safe, be healthy, play your dulcimer a lot. Dulcimers, play all of them. If you have more than one, there's one that's getting sad because it's not being played. So I wish you all the best. And that's my words for today. Play some more. We'll see you next week. Oh, there is something, or a couple things I wanted to call your attention to. That's why I was doing this. Let me share my screen again. I want us to go to our live events schedule. We just had the makeup with Jim Miller for his music theory workshop yesterday, or a Monday. And next week, it's going to be Thursday, which is December 3rd. Aaron May and I are doing a leap for the conclusion for our Leap Forward series for this whole year. And that'll be at 4 p.m. Pacific, which equals all the way across the time zones to whatever your time zone is, but 4 p.m. Pacific on Thursday, December 3rd. And the other thing, I have that's what I need to find, my Advent play along, evening prayer play along. Let's see if it shows up. No, it's not going to show up there. So I have to go to Almont Music. Oh my. Navigating one's own website. Let me share my screen. Let's get here to Advent. Searching for Advent. Got the musical Advent devotions. They're going to start again. But I also, let's see here. No, not that, not that, not that. I'm on Wednesdays in December. I'm hosting a Dulcimer play along service. I'm not finding it right now, so I'll stop doing that stuff. At 6 p.m. Pacific, which goes across 5 in Alaska, 9 in the Eastern time zone, using my Advent evening prayer service, or at my Dulcimer friendly evening prayer service with Advent tunes as well. This has been a class for people who have been learning the tunes and the service, and then that becomes a thing that you can participate. It'll be on Zoom, and then I'll have it feeding my Facebook page, my Almont Music Facebook page, if you'd like to join there. Every Wednesday in Advent. And if you're interested in signing up, that's what I needed to do. That's where I was going. Sorry. You can register. And if you are interested, then as you make sure you send me a note, because everybody who's registered will get the information. That's where you register so that you can join us. All right. Talon, it looks like you're going to have to do some slotting yourself. Yep. Good for you. And have a healthy, yes, I agree. And I'll see you next week.